Hi, and welcome to another video series on Sage Intelligence Reporting with me, your host, Sally. This is my third one so far, and this time I'm going to focus on defining the data you want for your reports through the Sage Intelligence Connector module. It will be built on the knowledge shared in the first and second series, so if you haven't watched them already, I suggest you take a look. I'll share how to get hold of them in a bit. Overall, this series will help to round out your knowledge of working with, editing, and designing reports in Sage Intelligence. As the owner of Sally's Necessities, in the first series, I shared how I got up and running with intelligence reporting and how it helped me gain an understanding of the financial position of my business. This included becoming familiar with the pre-built income statement, balance sheet, and cash flow reports. In the second series, I showed you how I was able to easily design reports of my own for my business based on ready-made data sets provided with the product. I first looked at creating financial reports using the powerful Financial Report Designer, and then moved on to operational reports, making use of standard Excel functionality like pivot tables and pivot charts. The easiest way to get hold of the first two series would be through the new Sage Intelligence Learning Portal. Here, Sage Intelligence have consolidated all their learning material and provided a clear learning path to help you upskill yourself on the product. To access it, open your browser and go to learning.sageintelligence.com. Once the portal loads, select your product at the bottom of the page. You can see that it is broken into beginner, intermediate, and advanced sections, and you can start at the level you think is most appropriate to you. Each section includes learning videos and recorded webcasts, document guides, links to Academy courses, and upcoming webcasts. The first series can be found under Visual Learning in the Beginner section, and you can watch the videos right where they are by clicking on them. The second series can be found also under Visual Learning in the Intermediate section. Now that you know where to find the first two series, and I trust you've been through both of them, let's get started on this one. Being a purchaser and distributor of boutique furniture, I got to a point where I wanted to be able to get a heads up on the payments that were owed to me by my customers and those that I needed to make to my vendors. In other words, my accounts receivable and accounts payable. I also thought that it would be nice to have this information available in a single report. I found that in my Sage Intelligence product, a report or data set didn't exist to explicitly provide me with this information, so I set about creating it on my own. In the end, one of the reports I made for myself was a dashboard summarizing information from both my receivables and payables. I've displayed it on screen. On the left are two gauges for my accounts receivable. The top one shows my top 5 customers by value owed to me, and the bottom one shows the top 5 invoices by the number of days until the payment is due. This gives me an idea of which customers owe me the most money and what payments I can expect to receive in the short term, allowing me to follow up if they aren't made. On the right are a similar set of gauges, but for my accounts payable. The top one shows my top 5 vendors by the value I owe, and the bottom one shows the top 5 invoices by the number of days until the payment is due. This gives me a view of the vendors I owe the most money to and the payments I'll need to make in the short term, allowing me to provision for them. Overall, the dashboard gives me a sense of my cash flow for the upcoming weeks. Working through this example, I'm going to show you how you can use the Sage Intelligence Connector module to build data sets of your own. Take note that your Sage Intelligence product may already include data sets and reports that cater for your receivables and payables, but by following along, you'll learn the necessary skills to put together just about any set of data you require. In this first lesson, I'm going to provide an orientation of the connector so that you can get familiar with it. In Sage Intelligence, there is usually more than one way to do something. And in the second lesson, I'm going to demonstrate how I created the data set for my accounts payable using some of the intuitive point-and-click functionality provided with the connector. This is intended for those of you who are starting out. Then, for those of you who are more familiar with or prefer working with SQL, in the third lesson, I'll show you 2 ways that you can define your data sets using it. This will be for my accounts receivable. In the fourth lesson, I'm going to introduce you to some additional functions provided with both the connector and Report Manager that you can use to trick out your reports. This will continue into the 5th lesson, where I'll combine my 2 data sets into a single report. I'll then finish things off by completing my dashboard and providing a summary of all that we've seen. Before continuing, it's important to note that the connector module requires a separate license in order to be used. Depending on the purchase of your Sage product, you may or may not have access to it. If you don't and are intent on using it, then you can purchase a license by getting in touch with Sage support. Let's get things underway. I've opened up my connector and I'm going to start by discussing the different sections. It resembles the Report Manager to a large extent. The pane on the left is called the Object window and contains a hierarchy of different data objects. Understanding the hierarchy is important, and I'll discuss each object type in a moment. To the right of it is the Properties window. This lists the properties and options provided for the object that is selected in the Object window. Then above the 2 panes is the Menu ribbon, and like the Report Manager, contains the File, Home, Tools, and Help tabs. Some of the functions contained in them are the same as those found in the Report Manager, but many of them are different, relating to the data sets you create rather than the reports. Also, like the Report Manager, the different functions become active when the object that they apply to is selected in the Object window. You'll become more familiar with some of them as I work through creating the data sets for my report. Furthermore, all the functions that apply to an object can be accessed by right-clicking on it as well. Let's now discuss the hierarchy of objects. At the top is the Enterprise object, which is the root or home for those below it. Then the next are connection types. Sage Intelligence is powerful in that it can connect to and access data from any ODBC compliant database. Each type of database requires different connection properties, and although you may likely only ever connect to a handful of them, if that, Sage Intelligence removes this complexity through the range of connection types provided out of the box. Below that are connections. Although you might want to access data from the same type of database, there may be different databases that you want to connect to, and possibly in different locations. Connections allow you to set up the individual links to these. They can also serve as a way of organizing the different data sets you want to create and give you the ability to consolidate data from different companies if you work with more than one. You then get containers. As the name suggests, these are the holders of each data set you want to create. This is where you can define the different database tables you want to pull information from and how the information is linked. As I shared earlier, Sage Intelligence provides different ways to do this, and I'll show you several of them in the upcoming lessons. In the last series, I mentioned that you can think of a container as one large table combining information from a number of smaller tables in your database. That table is made up of a number of fields, and you can select the individual ones you want to include in your data set. These are referred to as expressions and are the final level in the hierarchy. Apart from the fields in a table, there are also other types of expressions you can make use of, and you can identify them by the different icons used for them. One lets you define the information for a field based on existing fields using SQL syntax and allows you to make use of a number of SQL functions. Another lets you define the information you want using Excel formulas, which only resolve themselves once a report is run out into Excel. And one is used to define pass-through variables, which let you apply the parameters you capture when running a report, for example, fiscal year or date range, in unique ways to a container. I'll also share more on this throughout the series. Now that you have an understanding of the hierarchy, I'm going to discuss some of the components that you can expect to see in your Sage Intelligence product out of the box. Apart from the various connection types, it will include at least one connection referred to as the auto connection. This will be under the connection type associated with your Sage database and is used to connect to it. Under the same connection type, you may also have a consolidation connection, which is used to extract data from multiple companies simultaneously, assuming you work with more than one. Under each of these will be the standard containers that ship with Sage Intelligence, used for the standard reports provided in the Report Manager. If you don't have a consolidation connection and want to consolidate data, then you can add your own. In this series, I'm only going to focus on adding a standard connection, specifically for My Sally's Necessities datasets. This will demonstrate how a standard connection is created and allow me to distinguish those datasets from the out-of-the-box ones. To do this, select the connection type associated with your Sage database. Then, from the Home tab on the menu ribbon, select Add Connection. Remember, you can also get to the relevant options by right-clicking on an object. The Connection Info dialog will then appear. A field is provided to give your connection a name. I'm going to call mine Sally's Datasets. Because Sage Intelligence is integrated with my Sage solution, in this case, I can just make use of the auto connection system. And you can see, after checking the box at the bottom of the dialog, the relevant server name, database name, username, and password are automatically populated using system variables that are stored within the product. If you wanted to connect to a database other than your Sage one, then after selecting the right connection type, clicking Add Connection, and entering a name, you would need to enter the server name, database name, username, and password for the database. You may need to chat to your IT department if you're not sure about these details. After clicking Add, you can see the connection added under the connection type. One great thing about the connector is that it provides a number of verification features for the objects you add. One is the Check Test option, which can be used to test the integrity of connections, containers, and expressions. To do this, select the object, in this case the connection, and then click on Check Test on the Home tab on the ribbon. If the connection has been set up correctly, then you'll receive a success notification. Otherwise, you'll receive an error message. Because I have used the auto connection system for mine, it's unlikely that it would return an error. When defining your own data sets, it's good practice to test each of the objects that you add as you define them to make sure there are no problems with them from the start. You should now have a basic understanding of the main components that make up the connector module, including the object window in its hierarchy, the properties pane, and the menu ribbon. And you should have an idea of the components you can expect to see in your connector. I also have shown you how to create your own connection to your Sage database. You can now start accessing and joining tables in your database to define the data sets you want. In the next lesson, I'll get you started on this by showing you how I created the data set for my accounts payable. We'll be working with the graphical join tool, which makes this easy to do. I hope to see you there.